Thank you for listening to The Lawyer's Daughter. This is Jen Carroll, and this podcast does not have any video. I know I'm on YouTube, but that doesn't matter. I really appreciate you listening to the podcast here. Let's go get started. Hello, friends. It's August 28th, day 70, and I have been working on this for a while and wanted to talk about Project 2025 today. The reason it's important is that it's the whole infrastructure behind what the Republican Party is bringing forward. So I think of this hierarchically as Trump is the leader, he's the face out there, but frankly, any of these folks have millions of people, any of our leaders have millions of people behind them, not millions, tens and probably thousands of people behind them working to pull together policy and how we want to approach different things. And all policies have to look at so many aspects of implementation. You know, what's the economic impact? We look at the environmental impact. We look at the impact on humans and processes and what all, if we're going to start some mess that's going to topple us over. So the folks that have been behind the Republican Party for the longest time is an organization called the Heritage Foundation. If you go back to Tea Party, it grew out of there. It was huge in the Reagan administration. We'll talk about that in a minute. But this is so important. Do not think that when Trump says this is not his plan, he's never had a plan. He has opinions and he has ideas, but he doesn't have a plan. So this is what he's going to rely on. As many times as he wants to say he's not associated with it, he just is. In fact, he picked J.D. Vance on purpose because the people that fund this plan, the big money, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, and more, many, many more, but I will tell you they all have a particular skin color in common in general and a weird set of beliefs that basically the rest of us Americans, we're just in the way. We're just in the way, or we're a means to their ends, but we are not part of who they are getting up every day and worrying about, which is not what government's supposed to do. Government is absolutely supposed to worry about us. That's its job. That's why we pay taxes. Hi, government. Here's my taxes. Please make my life better. That's exactly how this is supposed to work. Well, here we are. So this will be a little bit of a longer podcast, and at the end, I'm going to do two ends. The first end will be, okay, that's done. I've given you all the information I pulled together today, except at the very, very end, I'm going to go through a table that I created that just talks about the potential impact of Project 2025 on different kinds of humans in the spirit of what was done at the Democratic Convention with Kenan Thomas. Is that his name? Yeah, I think so. It was great because it just made it so personal. And that's the hardest part. You know, when you listen to people talk in the abstract, you know, millions of people. Sometimes I think president's so hard because you can't actually go fix the thing for that person. Like we can when we leave our house, we can go help someone directly. You always have to think about the big swaths of humanity. So it's got to be hard. I always wanted to be president. That was like a thing when I was a kid. I wanted to grow up to be president. And then I went to student leadership and I loved it. I loved Robert's Rules of Order. I loved how we debated things. I loved how we think of policies for our high school that would make a big difference. I was class president, which would be like equal to state's class president for 2 years. And then I ran for student body president and I actually lost. And I lost because people were over me. And I really hadn't read the room. I didn't know. It was a big lesson. I ended up graduating early, as it turned out, which was actually good because the murder happened in March. So all those things kind of ended up being, I think the universe knew what was coming in March because I was in junior college by March. But I don't think I even finished that semester. Somebody gets murdered, your whole life turns upside down. So anyway, let's go back. I want to be president. But this is a big job. So here we go. Project 2025 is a big plan created by the Heritage Foundation. It's a group that supports conservative ideas. This project book is a ginormous 900 pages, people, almost 1,000 pages, detailed guide that discusses changes in important areas like immigration, environment, and federal agencies. The goal of Project 2025. And I think don't get caught up in the year 2025. They were targeting that year because they want Trump to win, right? So that's their target, is starting when he is installed in office in January. This is what they want to do. The goal is to change policies and ensure that a future conservative government can quickly implement these changes by placing loyal people in key government roles. Okay, dudes, the recruiting has already started, and I'm going to tell you about that. The Heritage Foundation was started in 1973. Take a quick check. Think about how old you were in 1973. Were you born yet? Did you know that they were conspiring as early as 1973 to change our country? It was started by conservative leaders Paul Weyrich, a political activist and commentator. So, a loudmouth. Hello, I'm in that category. Edward Fulner, a political scientist and policy expert. Okay, that's one. And Joseph Coors, a businessman and heir to the Coors Brewing Company fortune. He was the underwriter, as it were. So, back in 73, these three, a pundit, a commentator, a political science and policy expert, and a money, I got bucks to spend money guy, Coors, got together. Since then, the foundation has had a significant impact on U.S. policies. The foundation played a crucial role in President Reagan's policies in the 80s, especially his tax cuts and defense strategies. These cuts, the tax cuts they did, they were called, I don't have it in here, sorry. The tax cuts contributed to economic growth, but led to increased national debt. This is so important because what I'm learning about Republican tax cuts is there's an immediate kind of wee feeling, and it, I think the stock market, those kind of markets like it. But the reality is it takes us into increased national debt because they don't have enough money. The Republicans spend all this money, but they don't have enough. They're not bringing it in because they want to do favors for their friends who are the rich autocrats who basically play in the areas like the Heritage Foundation. They want to take care of them. That's the whole point. The foundation's full of the rich guys, and they want to make sure that their world isn't disrupted. So in 2017, during the Trump administration, the Heritage Foundation also influenced the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, one of the biggest tax overhauls in our history, and it lowered corporate taxes, reduced taxes for individuals, but it gradually steps back up and significantly added to the national debt. So the Heritage Foundation, shockingly, gives no you-know-whats about whether our country is going into debt. And I can tell you that the economics of this group, it's just like Trump running around right now saying tariffs, 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 which are taxes that cost us money. Robert Reich just put out this great video about how much, or maybe it was just a tweet, about how much tariffs cost us. We pay the markup. That's what a tariff is, a markup. So you might put a tariff on Coca-Cola because you don't want humans to drink so much sugary drinks, but that's called a use tax now. And once you're in the United States, it's not foreign, it's called a use tax. But the idea is the same. We're trying to shift. It just doesn't seem to be an economic understanding. So the costs get shifted back to American citizens, and they don't seem to understand that's how a tariff works. I know some of this politics stuff takes thinking, and I know sometimes thinking is hard, but guys, we got to do it. So the Heritage Foundation's been successful in pushing their agenda for decades. Their strategies involve detailed planning and long-term efforts. Just look at the Supreme Court. That was absolutely done with the complicit help of Mitch McConnell to load the Supreme Court with Heritage Foundation appointees. Let's see. The plan is the latest step in a long game. This Project 2025 is the latest step in a long game that they've been playing to shape our politics according to their views. And while President Trump has publicly distanced, or former President Trump has publicly distanced himself from the project, it's widely recognized that one of its key architects and supporters is closely tied to him in his previous administration. That's a guy named Russell Vought. It's like bot, but with a V, Vought. In an undercover interview with the author and Trump staffer Trump staffer Russell Vought, he said he was not worried about Trump's public dismissal of Project 2025 because the president had blessed his organization. Trump can't survive without Project 2025. He has no other plan. You just need to know this. This is not a man who has a lot of plans. So, essentially, Project 2025 is a blueprint for institutionalizing Trumpism, potentially entrenching a specific brand of conservative governance that could have lasting impacts on our democracy. Let's talk about that. So, often at the end of this podcast, when I said I'm going to go through a table, that's what I'm going to tell you about. Very, very specific things. But I decided I really wanted to look at Project 2025 and the theme of how we're looking at this election on this podcast. And that's within the context of our democracy. So if you're thinking about, the things that matter most, I think for me, absolutely protecting our democracy is like one of the most important things to me. Probably what got me so upset in my conversation this week with my friends. Because they just didn't seem to want to protect democracy. That just didn't seem to be part of their priority. And that's fine. I know there's some people out there that don't worry about that, but I worry about it. I'm a worrier about these kinds of things. Big systemic things. Good, Jen. Pick something you can really affect. All right, so let's look at the democratic norms that Project 2025 might threaten. And then in part 2, I'm going to talk about where it might actually contradict the Constitution. Because I just had to know, where are we potentially in big trouble? So one of the democratic norms, and this is not Democrats, it's not a Democrat norm. It's democratic, meaning it's based on our democracy. One of our democratic norms is checks and balances. That's why we have three branches of governments. Remember, in our system, no single branch of government, executive, that's the office of the president, legislative, that's Congress, or judicial, that's our courts and our justice systems, can dominate the others. So the system, it's supposed to be balanced. Like the poor lady, the lady scales of justice, we should have another one where there's 3 of these things and they're constantly trying to be in balance. Sometimes one will be a little higher, one will be a little lower, but the goal is to get them back in some kind of equilibrium, right? Balance, checks and balances. It's designed to prevent abuse by distributing authority across various branches. So we already know we have some problems right now with our 3 branches of government. And there's a 4th branch, but it's not a branch. The 4th estate is journalism and media, because one of the reasons a democracy works is journalists are our other check and balance. But they're all owned by corporate owners, and their corporate owners have an agenda, and some of them have this agenda. So that's a problem. That's not how it's supposed to work. The media is not supposed to be compromised. The 4th estate is really supposed to be, it's supposed to be unencumbered of people's personal agendas, big corporate personal agendas. So, so here's the threat. Here's the threat Project 2025 brings to checks and balances. Project 2025 advocates for a significant centralization of power within the executive branch. Think this through, guys. They want to move things that were in other areas into the executive branch. And in this example, that would be Trump. And then all the people behind whom who want to manifest this. So it proposes restructuring federal agencies to bring them under tighter presidential control, thereby weakening the checks and balances that prevent any branch from becoming too powerful. For example, placing the Department of Justice under stricter presidential control. Just so you know, there should be no presidential control of the Department of Justice other than if they make an appointment to be the United States Attorney General. Absolutely should be a wall, no border wall. It's a damn wall between the Department of Justice and the presidency. The president does not decide who to pursue legally. That's just how it's supposed to work. That's so you can't get somebody in there who wants to just lose his damn mind. But that's, of course, what Trump wants to do. He wants to get in there and get even with everyone who's wronged him. Oy, oy, oy. Okay, so the next norm that we're, because that's checks and balances, guys. The next one is civil service independence. You and I don't even think about this. I just know the civil service works. I get up in the morning, my mail comes, my taxes, I pay my taxes, I get my refund back. There's so much that we take for granted where our civil servants work. Now, if you don't like how a civil service is performing, you have every right to have an issue with that. But let's take a look at what Project 2025 wants to do. Right now, civil servants are expected to operate independently of political influence. They serve the public. They serve Americans, not red Americans, not blue Americans, not transgender Americans, not gay Americans. All of us. There's no preference. They serve us all. And it happens regardless of which political party is in power. In fact, I thought that was so weird during the Trump administration. Where he's like, the people in the red states, the people in the blue states. And I'm like, profanity here? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You're looking at this country in red and blue? That never happened. That just didn't happen. We didn't serve Americans. Once you got elected, you didn't serve Americans as red or blue. You served them as Americans. So if this independence is threatened, there could be consequences. Let me give you an example. Project 2025 proposes reintroducing something called Schedule F, a classification allowing the president to replace many civil servants with political appointees. Okay, civil servant has a super different mindset than a political appointee. You with me? Sure, we talk about government jobs, they're drones, whatever. They just come in, do their jobs, and leave every day. I kind of like that. It's working. But they want to bring in political appointees who don't get me started. But what do they know? Are they experts? Are they experts in undermining? I don't know. It's ridiculous to have it be from a political appointee. This move, this is the critique. This move would effectively erode the civil service's independence, turning it into a more politically driven entity. Can you imagine how they would compete for Trump's approval? Holy crap. It is like the worst kindergarten class where everybody's trying to kiss the teacher's ass ever. By filling government positions with loyalists rather than nonpartisan professionals, the executive branch could undermine the objectivity and stability of government operations. So, highway safety, pollution. I just can't. I can't. But that's what could happen. So democratic norms, checks and balances, civil service independence. How about this one? This is a huge one. Judicial independence. Judicial independence is a cornerstone of democracy. Holy crap. I watched Rudy Giuliani's lawyer appealing to the judge yesterday, in which Rudy Giuliani's lawyer just kept saying, he didn't say it like this, but basically he was like, it's not fair. Those people don't like us and they're trying to blame us for a crime. That's almost what he was saying. And the judge is like, what the hell difference does it make what the political affiliations are of the people who are charging Rudy Giuliani right now? He either committed a crime or he didn't. That's judicial independence. You either broke the law or you didn't. It doesn't have anything to do with your party. It has to do with your behavior. And the people charging you doesn't have to do with their party either. It has to do with your behavior. Now, it happens that some of the people charging you may not be your friends, but a good independent judiciary doesn't give a crap what you do in your personal life. They are there for the law. That's what they like. That's what I remember so much about my dad. He would just be like, but when it comes to the case, you've got to turn all that other stuff off. You might bring some of it into your argument in explaining why you made the choices of the behavior that you did, but you can't say somebody's just being mean to you and whining about it. That's just being a Karen. Sorry, Karen. I have a friend, Karen. She's listening to this right now going, thanks, Jen. Anyway, no offense to Karens, seriously. But let me shortcut my point. So the idea on judicial independence is it's supposed to be free from outside influences, particularly from any kind of hierarchical influence like the executive or legislative branches. We've watched Congress trying to bully our judges. Jim Jones, all by himself. Just that man alone, and he and Comer actually have just bullied the crap out of judges. But Jim's the best. Jim is the best. This man, he's never done anything to change America, but man, he can create a lot of noise and be such a little turd. So what's the threat? Project 2025 outlines a strategy to appoint judges who strictly adhere to conservative interpretations of the Constitution. Now, let's just take that sentence. They will strictly adhere to conservative, that's the part right there, conservative interpretations, emphasizing reshaping the judiciary to reflect the values of the executive branch. A judiciary should not have values. That sentence alone, a judiciary has the law. It's not supposed to have values. If it had values, it'd say, I don't like you because you look funny and I don't like people that look funny. That's not what a judiciary should do. This could lead to a judiciary that's less independent and more aligned with the executive branch's political goals, potentially undermining the impartiality essential to justice. I know our justice system isn't perfect either, and I know people's biases do show up on the bench. And I don't care for that. But we cannot change it so that it never matters again. That people's personalities on the bench are absolutely what you're shopping for. Just know. And then the last norm that's being put at risk is, of course, electoral integrity. And our elections have had integrity for the history of our country. It's one of the reasons it's federalized so that every state sets up how they manage their elections. I know that seems like 50 crazy ways to do it, but actually they're trying to work to the same standard as a national election would if it were federalized. If elections were federalized, they're trying to work to a standard of doing it really well and being extremely fair and being accessible and being free. That's the goal. That is the goal of our elections, to be free, fair, and accessible to all eligible voters. It includes protecting voting rights and the impartial administration of elections. And it's about being transparent. So 50 states go run their elections. Within each 50 states, they certify them saying, yep, we did all the things we needed to do right. We followed our own constitution because each state has a constitution. I think some of the Commonwealths have something else, but essentially they have something like a constitution for each state. And they will go ahead and do their electoral process within the states according to their rules. And then they certify it saying it followed the rules. The certifications, which already the Heritage Foundation folks are already trying to do that in Georgia. This is Trump's big thing, is that he keeps saying, I don't even need your vote, because he's trying to make sure that the votes that come in have been restricted. So let me give you an example. Here's the threat. If we start to mess with elections, if we let this institution start messing with our elections, we're in trouble. Project 2025 advocates for stricter voter ID laws. You might go, well, Jen, what's wrong with that? Well, let's see what they include, because they're really determined to limit the vote. And you can go read Project 2025 and find out what these stricter ID laws are. And other measures purportedly designed to prevent voter fraud. We don't have a problem with voter fraud in this country. It's not a problem. You have to be a registered voter. You show up. If you're on the registry, you get to vote, which is why we tell you every day, go check your voter registration. I got to go chase my kids. I don't know if they changed theirs since they moved. Anyway, voter fraud is a fallacy, and they keep using it as bait. It's a red flag they're throwing in front of you. Don't fall for it. These measures in practice could restrict voting access, particularly, and you know this was coming, among marginalized communities. Think people who can't fight for their right to vote. And it would undermine the principle of our voting, which is to be broad and equitable, and every citizen has the right. If you are not a citizen, you cannot register to vote. I don't mean you can't go to the bathroom. I mean, it wouldn't work. It would fail. The door's not shut. It's not how the situation works. They go check and verify if you put in a false registration, it's checked. That's how it works. Okay. Calm down, Jen. All right. Those are just our norms, okay? So checks and balances, civil service, judiciary, electoral, voting. Those are norms they're going to go after, and they want to try to change. And they want to change them because they want to win every time, and they want to do what they want to do. And we'll get to that in a minute. That's the last part of this. So let's talk a little bit about the Constitution. Project 2025 also has some constitutional concerns that could fundamentally alter the balance of power. So let's take a look at this. By advocating for increased executive control over federal agencies, restructuring judicial appointments, implementing policies that challenge legal norms, Project 2025 threatens to disrupt the foundational principles that we can find in our Constitution. So let's take a quick look at I have 1, 2, 3, I think I have 5. Because I kept looking and I'm like, oh my God. Okay, so constitutional concern, expansion of executive power, and unitary executive theory. The Constitution establishes a separation of powers among the 3 branches of government to prevent any single branch from becoming too powerful. But the unitary executive theory, endorsed by Project 2025, posits that the president should have this one makes me I want to vomit. The president should have near complete control over the executive branch, including federal agencies. This concentration of power could undermine the checks and balances fundamental to the Constitution's design. I'm telling you, this is something President talks about, former President Trump talks about all the time in his run-up. And I want you to hear this, run up to the election. I want you to listen for this near complete control, because he's speaking like he already has it. And that is the plan, is for him to have it upon entering the office in January. So you need to pay attention and see. You're going to hear this expressed as his countenance, how he talks. I will, we will, it will. That's how he speaks, because he's going to have a ton of control. The red flag is Project 2025. It advocates expanding that power. And this will essentially be weakening the other branches of our government as he pulls this all together. So that's a constitutional concern. The next is the weakening of congressional oversight. And we've already, this is like a pet peeve of mine. It's already weakened because people have just decided they don't have to testify to Congress. They don't have to. Bannon is in jail because he wouldn't go testify. He just no. That makes me crazy. I'm glad he's in jail. More people need to be in jail. What's his name? That other Peter Navarro? What the heck? That other jackass is in jail. Went to jail too because they just said no. And honestly, I don't think 4 months is enough, because what they're saying no to is huge. It's it's congressional oversight. Our leaders feel something is so important that they're actually looking into it. And members of the public, and honestly, members of Congress, when they're subpoenaed, just say, no, thank you. They don't even say no, thank you. They just ignore it. Just straight passive, aggressive. Like they just passive. That's it. They just totally don't reply. So the issue is the congressional oversight would be reducing congressional oversight would weaken Congress's ability to hold the executive branch accountable. So you see how this works now, right? First, they give additional power to the executive branch, quite a bit of additional power. Then they weaken the ability to oversee what's going on in the executive branch. And so that diminishes the power of the legislature. So suddenly what were 3 branches of government are starting to get really out of whack. Now, if you think about this and you look at this constitutionally, restructuring or eliminating federal agencies without requiring new legislation from Congress, because Congress is who used to restructure and manage federal agencies, it infringes upon Congress's authority and shifts power again to the executive branch. So we're seeing them take responsibility. I feel like this is, I talked about this with my friends, because one of the things that happened to me at at my company, Bromium, when I was there, is they did something called constructive termination of me. And constructive termination is when your responsibilities are taken away. You still have the job. They didn't take your job away, but they took away everything you're responsible for. And basically what I see happening here with Project 2025 is they're constructively terminating a lot of the roles of our Congress people. And honestly, Congress people are always more in touch with Americans than the executive branch. The executive branch has to work harder to be in touch with Americans because their jobs are just so much more big, large, or just so much more, right? So now they're going to constructively get rid of the Congress. Constructive termination. They're not really terminating them, but basically they're terminating their responsibilities and where they can have an impact on our government. Interesting. And then finally, there's two more things that are worrisome to me. One is the erosion of federalism. So federalism is core principle of the Constitution, which delineates the power distribution between, so imagine that there's power and in the United States we have the federal government and then we have the states. So some of the things my friends were not happy with were not federal rules. They were from their states and maybe even some from their municipalities. One of the things that drives me crazy is when a president's getting hammered by everybody for things that's not in the job description. Because the federal government is only responsible for things that affect the whole country. The states are responsible for the things that affect their state. The 10th Amendment reserves powers not explicitly granted to the federal government to the states or the people. So I should have gone and pulled this amendment. But the 10th Amendment says that the federal government, there are certain powers not explicitly granted to the federal government, and those go to the states or the people. That's just what federalism is. So Project 2025 suggests consolidating federal power within the executive branch. Oh my God, this is such this is how you have an authoritarian government. Essentially, you just give the executive all the power. So they want to consolidate federal power within the executive branch, potentially diminishing the authority of state governments. So this is really important, guys, because let me just finish the second sentence before I lose it. This centralization could infringe upon state sovereignty, violating the principles of federalism and reducing the state's ability to govern independently in areas under its control traditionally. So let's just take one example right now. Trump was full on saying, I'm responsible for the abortion ban. And he goes, I loved it. Everybody was asking for it. We all wanted it. Whatever. I don't even know what he's talking about. But he was taking 100% credit for that. And then he found out blowback. Like, it's not working, right? Because many of us want to come just offer him some free birth control, if you know what I mean. So anywho, here we are. He's changed his message now to say, oh, no, abortion rights belong to the states. You know why he can say that with confidence? Because he knows his plan is to diminish the authority of state governments. That's the ultimate plan. So you can say it belongs to the states if you're planning to diminish the authority of state governments. Okay, let's go to the last one, because this is, right in my sweet spot. The potential curtailment of civil liberties. This is where we could have a very big constitutional problem with this project. The Bill of Rights protects fundamental individual freedoms, such as speech, religion, assembly, from government infringement. Any government action threatening these rights must meet strict constitutional scrutiny to prevent the erosion of civil liberties. Oh, you know what, guys? Guess what? Project 2025 proposes expanding government surveillance. Could you just sit with that word for a minute? In America, the Heritage Foundation is supporting, and the GOP is behind, government surveillance and increased law enforcement powers. Nothing says authoritarian in the morning like a little secret surveillance and increased enforcement. In fact, they just pulled this crap on that poor 87-year-old woman down in Texas. State did it, not the feds. State busted it on her and accused her of voter fraud. And she's just a member of LULAC who's been busy registering people to vote. Son of a gun. So there's your surveillance, and increased law enforcement powers. These measures could potentially infringe upon the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable searches and seizures and the First Amendment guarantees of free speech and religion. This expansion of power could lead to temporary or even permanent restrictions on civil liberties in the name of combating domestic threats. Funny how they turned that on us, isn't it? That's what I hate being in a us-them situation, because it just doesn't, it's so not helpful. Okay, so let me take you through one more thing, and then the people who want to leave can leave. But guess what? Holy crap, the Project 2025 training programs are already happening right now. What is that, Jen? What the hell are you talking about? Oh, let me share this with you, because it's happening now. Project 2025 includes a comprehensive plan to prepare a boatload of conservative political appointees for the government roles that we've all talked about if they win the presidency in 2024. Get this, it's for real. You can click on it in the blog. The project's Presidential Administration Academy is crucial. Presidential Administration Academy. There is an effing training site with videos. It offers training on navigating the federal government, implementing conservative policies, and countering what the project describes as a, quote, hostile bureaucracy. Hostile? You bet it's hostile. GTFO, get the out of here. What are you doing? The effort is framed as necessary to implement these conservative goals within a future administration rapidly. They're ready to go, guys. The trigger, they're going to pull it. The training program could lead to dangerous concentration of power within the executive branch. ProPublica did some research and found that future appointees are being coached on bypassing bureaucratic processes. Do not assume a bureaucratic process is a bad thing. Bureaucracies have good points and bad points. So please do not take bureaucratic as a negative word. Think of it as well thought through, tested, and proven, which is a better way to think of it. Avoiding Freedom of Information Act disclosures, they want to shut it down. They do not want to produce and be held accountable for their actions. So we might lose FOIA, and outmaneuvering federal employees who might resist their agenda. So they're literally getting trained to bypass process, avoid process, and outmaneuver process. If that doesn't sound like a terrorism plan, I don't know what is. That's a way you overthrow your government. But they've just done it as a Project 2025, and they've put it out there for the whole world to see because they feel so good about it. And the problem is nobody's going to read 1,000 pages, and it took me forever to do this, and I can't even imagine how long it would take somebody who just is new to this and has to overcome language and complexity and laws, and there's a lot of gobbledygook in how they write. It's kind of obfuscated with a little bit of, I guess, lawyerese. I guess legalese is how I'd say it. Legalese and frankly, bureaucratic ease, if that's a word. So I want you to know this training is happening right now, and they're training them to bypass process, avoid FOIA, and outmaneuver those people in the jobs right now who want to do the job that they were hired to do. Such tactics raise concerns about the erosion of government transparency and accountability, undermining both our norms and creating our norms for a nonpartisan, independent civil service. I just liked that those people did their jobs and I didn't know who they voted for. I just assumed that's why they just did their jobs. The project's focus on preparing these appointees to enact this dramatic course correction is an intent to reshape government rapidly that align closely with a specific political ideology. So democracy was our specific political ideology, just to bring this all back to the beginning. We started with democracy. They're trying to change it. I don't know the name for it, and I don't know if the names help anybody understand. If I were to give it a name like authoritarianism, that just makes people kind of glaze over because, first of all, how do you even spell it? And second of all, what does that really mean? This means they have an agenda. They want to change our country. They don't like how democracy works because democracy means they're going to lose power because it's power of the people. And the people are not the white Christian evangelicals. They're just not. That's one of the groups out there, but that's not the people. So if you are not worried, you should be. This is not a drill. These changes could impact our democracy and give a ton more power to the next president if he's a Republican, making government jobs political, changing how judges are chosen, tightening voter rules, and weakening the checks and balances to keep our democracy fair and independent. So, you're going to need to read some articles. My good friend Grace is tweeting about Project 2025 every day. She helped me focus on this. Choose the matters that matter most to you, the issues that matter most to you. You know, I keep telling you the issues that matter most to you, that's what gives you heart. So go look at the things that matter to you and then get an opinion and spread the word. Talk to people you know, share what you've learned on social media, and ask your leaders if they support these plans. We need to take action, and we need to do it based on information so we can protect the principles our country was built on and just maintain our beautiful democracy. Now, pretend to end there, but if you want to hang out, I'm just going to read the information that I put together in this table. And really, what I did is I said, how would Project 2025 impact different groups in America? And that was my question. And so I went and looked at, I went and did it a little bit in the spirit of how they did it at the convention. And I said, but I did it kind of Jen Carroll-y too, because I'm like, what about female people? So I put down a list of people in my head who I wanted to find out who this would affect. And then I found out how many of those people were out there. And so you've got to search for, it's an estimate. Guys, none of this, please don't ever use me as science or as any kind of scholarly reference. Use it as a way, please use my content as a way to go think. So, because this is, it's a lot of work, but I'm finding that I'm having some slight imperfections just because I'm going so fast. So here we go. I do have the sources though with these for what the content is here. So what we have is, if we were looking at female people, there's about 166 million female people defined as women. Project 2025 wants to take away FDA approval of the abortion pill mifepristone and use an old law to punish people who send abortion pills by mail. This, of course, would severely limit access to abortion. So female people, they've got something for you. Climate people, there's about 150 million out there. You are defined as environmental activists. So the project plans to roll back environmental regulations and pull out of the international climate agreements. Not to bum you out, but yesterday the climate people, or maybe it was on Monday, the climate people are saying we're going to see the seas rise faster because our ice has melted faster than they thought. We basically have blown it. I don't know what we're going to do. I can't think about climate because it gets me so bummed, and I can't even talk about it with my daughter because she's like, how am I supposed to have children? I go, I don't know how you're supposed to have children. I don't know if I feel bad that I had you and that we didn't preserve the world for her. So the climate people, they plan to roll back environmental regulations and pull out of international climate agreements, and this could set back our efforts to fight climate change. For non-white people, about 144 million of you, including Black, Hispanic, Asian, and Native Americans, the project wants to ban teaching critical race theory in schools funded by the federal government. Now, mind you, I love that it's called critical race theory. Critical race theory has become a label for a vast amount of content, including slavery, including slave trade, including us moving here and displacing Native Americans. Like, critical race theory really does want to just basically paint the fence white. So this, if they pull that off, this will diminish educational content that addresses systemic racism and its impact on people of color. I don't even want to sit here and try to explain to people about systemic racism, but believe me, it's true. That one was one that came up at that lunch, and it bummed me out because I just can't believe people don't see it. There's just evidence everywhere. But shut up, Jen. Let's keep going. How about sick people? There's 133 million people out there with chronic conditions and disabilities. And Project 2025 plans to cut Medicaid funding and add work requirements for benefits. You know, just because you're a quadriplegic, you just need to work harder. Are you... Sorry, Mostly, I usually just want to go into profanity, but luckily I'm sober, so I won't do that. This will limit your access to health care for low income and sick people. Sounds like a good plan. I cannot stress enough, these Heritage Foundation people are not for the people. Smart people. Hey, smart people, did you know they're coming for you? You're about 105 million of out there. College graduates. And guess what? Project 2025 plans to end student loan relief programs, including public service loan forgiveness. Now, you will pay, and it will be harder for educated people to manage their student debt. That's right. You will pay for being smart. If you're young, you're going to pay too. There's about 73 million young people in America. Project 2025 wants to emphasize school choice, which would move public funds to private and religious schools. This will reduce the quality and availability of public education, especially in low-income areas. It's also doing amazing things by taking money out of government coffers to pay private schools that have no accountability and no responsibility to report on how that money is being used. And all you need to do is go focus in on, I believe it's Oklahoma and Texas, to see what a debacle this thing is. Okay. Plus, by the way, as you disenfranchise education, you absolutely will disenfranchise learning. So we need to look at education differently than making it more distributed. It actually needs to get its crap together. We've got to get our education together because we are not benchmarking against our other countries very well. We're a hot mess. But guess what? Are you an old person? There's 56 million old people out there, people 65 and older. The Project 2025 wants to reform Social Security and Medicare, moving it towards privatization and market-based solutions. So if the stock market has a bad time, you'll lose all your money. Nothing like, and privatization, if the company goes out of business, well, your money's not protected. So there's nothing sane about that in terms of protecting our Social Security and Medicare. And I can't even imagine Medicare privatized. Holy crap. That we have done such a bad job with privatizing healthcare. I had somebody tell me, I'm going to keep my corporate healthcare. And I'm like, you think you can until you can't. Like, it goes away. It doesn't live with you. You don't get to keep your, God, I so remember being a kid when we knew our doctor. We happened to know where he lived because it was a small town, Santa Paula, California. We knew our doctor. We played with his kids, and he knew our whole family. And so healthcare was like this connection. It was a safe place. And if you needed some advice, it was someone you could ask. Healthcare is not like that. Now it's distributed. You got to fight battles for everything. Your teeth and your eyes and your feet are like unrelated unless it's orthopedic. And then you can be related. But if it's podiatry, that's different. But don't worry. I've got something that might work on your eyes, but I can't get that at the doctor. You have to go to an eye doctor. And that's not covered by your insurance. It's covered by different insurance. But don't worry, because once I fix your eyes, you'll notice your teeth are crooked, and that's covered by none of your health care. And you've got to have preference insurance for that. And by the way, it's really crappy. Yeah, that's all working great. Let's go ahead and just make that worse for the old people. Immigrant people, who are you? There are 44 million of you, but I broke it down. There are 35 million of you who are documented. Use whatever word you want. Legal, illegal, whatever. Documented 35 million. Undocumented 11 million. Project 2025 pushes for more deportations and stricter immigration. And I'm going to tell you right now, they don't see those two differences. And this could lead to more family separations and fear in the immigrant communities. It could lead to raids. It could lead to a lot of really ugly stuff. They were talking about deporting millions, more than 11 million, millions of people to places the people that they will be deported never lived. Didn't live there for half an hour. You know, that's not where they belong. But sure, let's just deport them. And then we have the poor people. Heritage Foundation does not care for poor people. It's their fault, don't you know? Poor people are 37 million people live in this country below the poverty line. I had to just sit with that for a minute. This is from the census. 37 million people are below the poverty line. And y'all don't, not you. I know that people who listen to this podcast are not those people. You guys are my people. But those people out there don't want to support them. That, to me, it's just like, it's not just embarrassing. It like hurts somewhere in my heart. That hurts that there are 37 million people out there below the poverty line, just struggling every day. Remember I talked about feral people? Those are poor feral people. We got to get them out of that mess. It's too hard. And you know how hard it is? You know when you're at the bottom of the abyss? That's the hardest place to climb out of. That is, the journey's the furthest and it's the darkest when you're at the bottom. I love the abyss as a metaphor, because when you imagine being at the bottom, when you're starting to climb up, even your point of view of the sky is wider as you get higher up from that abyss. As you come up from the bottom, even the opportunity of what's out there becomes wider as you move up. But when you're at the bottom, at that poverty level, it's dark. It's super hard to see how to get yourself out of there. And we just tell people, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's BS. It does take a village, and we have to help each other. We just do. We just do. Okay. The project, when it comes to poor people, as I told you, if you stay for the table, you're staying for a much longer talk, because it just kills me what they're planning to do here. The project proposes cutting federal spending on programs that help the poor, including low-income schools and school meal programs. This will make it even harder for poor people to access essential services. So let's go to the party people, the LGBTQIA people. I love that I associate partying with them, even though they've had to fight so hard for their existence. There are 20 million LGBTQIA people. Plus, there's a plus sign there too. 20 million. That's a big group, but it's less than the amount of poor people we have. The plan aims to eliminate DEI programs, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion, and limit laws that prevent discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender. So basically, it could make it harder to protect LGBTQIA people from discrimination, but they're actually wanting to limit the laws that protect against discrimination. That's when you know they give no you-know-whats, because they don't care about anybody but themselves. But here we go, millionaire people. There are 22 million millionaire households in this country. 22 million millionaires. Okay, so that's fewer than there are poor people. It's actually more, but I only used million. I used $1 million as the cutoff. So if you look at the price of my house right now, I would be considered a millionaire people, which is really funny because I live in a double wide on a foundation in Santa Cruz that is way, way, way overvalued. But according to how they roll up humans, I guess I would be here. They want to propose tax reform. Now I used millionaire people. There are real tables and stuff behind this. So I just want you to know this is a generality. I'm generalizing here, because it kicks in at specific limits. It kicks in at specific income levels. And I don't have $1 million income. I wish. Not even close. Right now, seriously cash poor. Project 2025 proposes tax reforms to lower corporate taxes and create a flat tax rate. This would reduce the overall tax burden for high-income earners, including millionaires. Okay, but 37 million people that are below the poverty line can't get school meals. That's what's wrong. Guys, this is what the Dems are fighting. These kinds of inequities. Criminal people, there's 6.5 million criminal people out there. Did you know that? They were incarcerated or on probation and parole. The plan calls for a major overhaul of the DOJ and FBI, focusing more on violent crime and the president's agenda, which is really interesting. In this one, it really has to do with whatever the president, in this case Trump, wants to go after. And he freaking wants to criminalize everything. This could lead to a more politically driven approach to criminal justice. Yeah, it's then you're going to start to get his pet projects, right? Like criminalizing transgender people if they want to get medical care. Criminalizing women if you have an abortion. You're going to get the death penalty, which is just beyond ironic. So you criminalize people for the things they do that upset Donald Trump. Swear to God, that's the plan. And then finally, we talked about civil servants. There are 2.1 million federally employed people, and they're going to potentially lose their jobs. They're certainly going to lose their independence. All right, so that wraps up my table. This thing did go long, but I wanted to take you through that. If you're still listening, thank you. You're a trooper. But I wanted to take you through some examples because it's just so interesting, and the inequities and the mix here of how it's kind of my way or the highway, love it or leave it. Too bad you got run over by my Cybertruck. It's too bad you got run over. I didn't see ya. We were just too busy doing our thing and moving fast. All right. I hope this is helpful. The reason I wanted to do 2025 now is that we're going to talk about issues, and the way I'm approaching the issues is I'm going to compare the Democrat platform, the Republican platform, and the mandate from Project 2025. It's called the Mandate for Leadership. I'm going to include Project 2025 platform. All of these are hot links on the side of my blog. If you look on the sidebar, the side widget bar thing, there's buttons. I've moved them out of the blog and onto the side, and you can get access to all this information. Okay. Thank you for listening today. We'll get into I'll also let you know the plan for the Labor Day is I have three blogs essentially done, not quite done, about the U.S. Supreme Court. I think I'll do the Supreme Court over Labor Day. I can maybe record them all on the same day so I too can have a holiday. But I think I'm going to cover that because I don't expect you're listening over Labor Day. But if you come back and listen, you could come in and just grab the Supreme Court set of 3. So if you're not listening, I'm not going to. I have to, okay, sorry, since you're still on with me, I'll do one other thing. It's so funny every day because, I don't know how y'all, the people that give me feedback are people that love me. So I don't trust them because they're really nice to me. But sorry, what was my point? The point was I'm trying to do this in a way that engages you. But every day, my point was my obsession. My obsession every day is I go and look, of all things, at the blog numbers. Because that tells me how many of you are actually coming to look at the information I've worked up. I have to do the information anyway, because I'm not going to talk to you without me doing the prep. But it cracks me up. That is the stat that I watch all the time, is that darn blog traffic stat. So you don't have to go to the blog. If you don't go to the blog, it's fine. I'll live. I just was sharing that with you because that's like my funny neuroses. All right, I will be back and we will start jumping into issues starting tomorrow, and then we'll do the Supreme Court over the weekend, and I'll be back with more issues and anything topical. Of any news breaking, I'll go ahead and cover that. Let's go, people. We have a campaign. We got to go fight win. You are more educated after today. Go, go, go. I love working with you, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Make sure you subscribe and rate, and I'll be back with another episode really soon.